Hi, everybody. A really warm welcome to What the Woman. I'm the creator of this podcast and the host, Chrissy Gasberry-Caudry. I'm a national health editor for a publication you definitely know the name of. I'm also a New York Times bestselling ghostwriter. And I also have written my second memoir is coming out later this month, Show Don't Tell, a writer, her teacher, and the power of sharing our stories. We'll talk more about that. This is an advanced copy. This is not a finished copy. It comes out in hardcover April 29th. I also have been this month in the book publishing industry for 21 years. And when we talk about women, the tagline of What the Woman is conversations you crave about our health and our lives. Wow, career has been a big part of my life. And when you read Show Don't Tell, but also a theme that you're going to hear a lot about in this show is that I was a small town girl and I really didn't necessarily want or didn't think I wanted to have a career whenever I was young. So to be able to say that I've been doing anything 20 years, it's really exciting. And it feels like an accomplishment to me. And for this very first episode, I wanted to give all of you a gift. This next hour is just the distillation of my 21 years especially in book publishing, but media comes into that a lot. You got to know, I spent a lot of years just working around the clock. It's a big reason, I didn't meet my now husband until my late 30s. So I want to share with you what I have heard the most from people throughout my publishing career. And that is, how do you get a book published? I think it was Forbes around 2018. They ran some data suggesting that 81% of Americans want to write a book someday. And there's a lot of mystique around this industry. I know, I grew up in rural Pennsylvania. I had no connections in the business whenever I got into it. And my career started inside, the marketing department at Simon & Schuster. Again, 21 years ago this month, which is really, really crazy. And I'm still, in touch with my boss, the boss who hired me at that time, Suzanne. She's so great. I'm going to try to get her on the show one of these days. I know so many wise people in publishing. So this is you're getting to pick my brain. I'm going to be jumping around a lot, probably. I'm a really global thinker. I'm just glad that I had my coffee hours ago. But just, you're getting all of this for free. I should be charging thousands for this, but I'm really, really excited that I can give it to you as a gift. If you know somebody who's been curious about publishing, about writing their own story, getting started, feel free to share this with them. And in the coming weeks, I would love to host a follow-up conversation. For any questions that you have, leave them in the comments. We're working on a website for the podcast. Right now, my own website is under construction. A lot of moving pieces as we get ready for the new book to come out. The process has been really, really fast paced for Show Don't Tell. So there's a lot of moving parts, but I say with anything, I brought a copy of my first memoir from 2011 to show you. I call this my You've Got to Start Somewhere book. And HarperCollins published How to Love an American Man. Gosh, it's 14 years ago now. And with that book, with this podcast, with anything that you are crystal clear with your intention about in life, don't wait until it's perfect. Because it's never going to be perfect. Decades into this business, with decades more to go, I am forever a student of my profession, and that's a beautiful thing. But for today, I'm going to tell you like everything I know relevant to the question of how do you get a book published. So sit back for the next hour. It's just going to be, I hate this term, but I love its function. It's going to be a big brain dump. Take lots of notes. Okay. So like I said, I was a small town kid. I grew up 5 hours from New York City and never even traveled there, I think, till I was 11 or 12. My mom and my best friend's mom took us on a bus to see Cats on Broadway. That shows you how long ago it was. Remember when Cats was even on Broadway? So I wasn't one of these kids who could just like hop on the train and be in Manhattan in 45 minutes. I was not living in a suburb of New York. I was living in very rural Pennsylvania. I loved reading at that time. I was a kid in the 80s and in the 90s. But I arrived in the world just days before the 80s officially started. So really, I grew up reading Babysitter's Club and the Judy Blume books, and I was really drawn to stories of independence and curiosity in females and self-discovery and autonomy. And if you read How to Love an American Man, the very first line in the book is how like I grew up just thinking that it was really, really normal to talk about women's health, our bodies. I announced to my whole family when one of my close relatives got her period for the first time. That's how to Love an American Man starts. And that goes hand in hand, I would say, with my career path. Here's the thing. There weren't I talk about this in the next book, in Show Don't Tell. There weren't a lot of clear career paths for women where I was from back then. You couldn't necessarily make a living being a creative professional, not as far as I saw. And so the most creative, problem solving, the figures who were the most excited about life and who promoted and inspired curiosity were a lot of my teachers. And so Show Don't Tell happens to be about the 30-year friendship that I've had with my high school English teacher. I think if it hadn't been for her and for, maybe a couple other figures as I was coming of age, I would not have believed in my writing talent at all. And I would dare say I didn't necessarily have much talent then. I think somebody like Mrs. Courthouse saw a fledgling intention within me and was really invested in encouraging and pulling that out of me. So, I'm like telling you my whole career path in, a matter of 5 minutes. I want to put it in a nutshell for you so you can understand, how I got to, to where I am right now, to where I can pass this knowledge on to you. I went to college and I double majored in psychology and communications, thinking I was going to become, I loved listening to radio psychologists whenever I was in high school. And instead, I loved my clinical psych classes. Even interned at the Cleveland Clinic one summer. But even more, I loved my communications classes. And that's probably not a big surprise. Mrs. Courthouse, taught both English and communications, whenever I was in high school. So So after I graduate from college, I still had no idea what I wanted to do. And, in fact, my roommates, a few of us were just on a text this morning. They used to call me the winding road because they said you would never know where Chrissy was going to end up. And I didn't either. And so, I remember graduating, from college. I have completed 2 majors. I now have a Bachelor of Science degree. Maybe I'm going to go into teaching now. Like, I had so many interests for somebody who, had for a long time as a kid thought maybe maybe the smartest thing to do in life was just like marry well. That was the message that we sometimes heard where I was from. Now I was like really, really hungry to find my path. So it so happened that my best friend from college, was moving to New York and after we graduated, and, that had sort of been on my bucket list too. And 9/11 had happened really recently and Sex in the City was really popular. Like, New York was just this place to be. And it was really, really, a symbol of strength and being self-made. So I followed my best friend to New York. We didn't live together. He got there actually a year before I did, but we were in the same grad school program together. I got an internship there at the NYTimes. And my boss for that internship had worked in book publishing for a lot of years. And a couple times she said things to me like, oh, you would be a great fit for this field, or I have a couple connections in publishing. And meanwhile, I had a hairstylist who had a client, who worked at Simon and Schuster. And that was my foot in the door. And to this day, I say, that's an advantage of being a small town kid. I think I was just friendly to everybody. And I was like willing to be vulnerable and be like, I don't know anybody. And I could use some connections, or I was really, really grateful for those, early introductions. Don't mind my Spindrift. This is what one day Spindrift is going to sponsor this podcast. So it was, I'm 23, 24 years old, and I have my first job in publishing. It didn't pay a lot, but for 3 years I was at Simon and Schuster. At one point I moved out of the children's division into the publisher's office and started to really see up close the acquisition process behind books, meaning, why does an editor feel compelled to buy a book, to like make a deal with a certain author for a certain project, and others don't reach that point? So I kind of dedicated those years to studying that. I was kind of obsessive about it, to be really honest. And I was writing quite a bit in my spare time as well. So where to take you next in all of this? At a certain point, I moved to Italy for a year. It's when Eat, Pray, Love had just come out. I was involved at that time. It was the early 2000s. I had met, someone who captured my fancy at that time and lived in another part of the world. So that inspired me to start being a little bit more adventurous. And to this day, I've had more recent reflections, and if I could go back, and tell that younger self, I think maybe I might have encouraged her not to leave New York. But the good thing about that is that it was a really clear springboard. My parents were having a fit. Like, I was showing some promise in the publishing industry. I was being recognized even as a young professional at my company. But I loved the creative process behind it. I loved that you could start with nothing, nothing. All you had was an idea in your head. There was no material except a computer and your notebook, and like at a certain point, you keep working at it and you figure out how to be good at it, whatever that means. And then like you end up with this, that was really, really, really powerful to me. I mean, our books it's something that like makes you immortal. It really, I think, why are people so drawn to it? I mean, and why do 81% of Americans say that they want to write a book? Or at least, we're reporting that around 7 years ago. It's a flex. It is. It's a flex. But there's also that really magical, beautiful, often solitary creative process behind it. And I think that is really, really intriguing for a lot of people. So here we go. I'm going to tell you how it works, what goes on behind the scenes, and ultimately like the materials that you need to publish a book someday. One thing I'll say is that the rules are a little bit different. The tracks are different. If you're trying to publish a kid's book versus a novel, meaning a work of fiction, versus a work of nonfiction, like a memoir, or you are a scientist or a doctor or an expert in something, and you're, going to write something that's based on truth and facts. Those three tracks are quite different from each other. So 2 things I want to say up front. Children's publishing is its own animal. And I'm not somebody, even though my career started in that, like that's not where I have focused a lot of what I've learned. So it's such an interesting business. You get into the licensing. If there's a really famous artist and they create a character that's so lovable and, and then it develops into a franchise of books. It's really, really neat to witness that. I just don't know a lot about it, to be honest. When it comes to novels, I know a little bit more about that, but like the way to get a novel published, if you've heard that you have to write the whole thing first, that's pretty much true. Nonfiction, I don't want to say it's easier, but you don't necessarily need to have sat down and completed an entire manuscript before any agent or any editor will even read it. So that brings me to my next question. Do you need an agent? That definitely comes up a good bit in this industry. I have a few, there are a couple ways to answer that. I would say you want an agent, but I would even further say you want a good agent. In the years that, when I say that I've been in publishing for 21 years, I have been, selling and writing books for 16 of those. And I've seen deals happen without an agent. But they're kind of few and far between. And the industry standard is that, you are going to pay your agent a 15% commission out of whatever the publisher pays you. And by the way, we're having this conversation strictly about the traditional publishing industry. I'm not speaking to self-publishing. I'm not speaking to hybrid publishing. I'm talking about the old fashioned way. You have an idea, or you have written a book, or you have written a book proposal. That's for nonfiction. I'm going to walk you through that shortly. And you want to sell it for somebody to publish it. That's considered traditional publishing. And that is what I'm speaking to. So the model is that the publisher is paying you to acquire the rights to publish your project. So, I was talking about an agent. So your agent makes a 15% commission on whatever they sell for you. Unless sometimes there's a 20% I've seen there, or understand that all of this can vary and nothing I'm saying is gospel. This is like the information that I know, that I have. This is a very, very subjective business. It's also changed a lot in the years that I've been in it, even like between the time my first memoir came out compared to, this next one that's coming out in a few weeks. So, there are cases like when you, if say your agent or your publisher takes your book to the Bologna Book Fair in Italy or the Frankfurt Book Fair. These are places where agents and editors gather and get excited together about books that they think have international appeal. In those cases, your agent might get a 20% commission. But I'm here to tell you that commission, in my mind, personally, just my own opinion, it's worth it. It's worth it. They are going to advocate for you. Certainly in my case, like better. I don't like the business side of it. I don't want to be involved in the negotiations. I don't want to be stressed out. I don't want to be, nickel and diming over she's going to do this, or I'm not going to deliver this, or it's like, you guys handle it. I need to be able to focus stress free on the work. And that especially comes up with ghostwriting, I would dare say. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So, and whenever I say you want a good agent, what do I mean by that? I mean, again, it's subjective, and to some degree, again, you've just got to start somewhere. So if this is your very first book and, the stories that you hear about authors getting rejected like 6 dozen times or 120 times, before anybody finally wants to represent their book as their agent, or before an editor finally wants to acquire the book, that really, really happens. This is not a business for the weak of heart. So rejection is almost certain. And sometimes there's a phrase an old, a dear author colleague of mine used to say, Alfie McCourt, you got to dance with the one who brought you. If you have an agent who's interested in you, even if they're not your number one pick, again, sometimes you just got to start somewhere. But I'll tell you, I mean, over the years, as far as the agents who have represented me for my solo projects, I've only 2 or 3 have, but, I get clearer and clearer as time goes on about what I want from them. And you kind of don't even know what you don't know, but ultimately you want someone who really believes in your book, and can make a strong case for why a publisher should want to buy it. And also they believe in you, and to be really honest, like when people ask me how much do you think I'm going to make for for this first deal, I see everything from like, oh my gosh. I mean, you see everything from, I've seen $13,000 deals. I've seen $150,000 deals. In the years that I've been doing this. And then you hear about like the big celebrity memoirs, the Britneys, the Prince Harrys, and obviously they're getting millions. And then their ghostwriters are writing like these books end up being publishers' dreams because they are like tell-alls about the behind the scenes of what was going on in these people's lives when we were sort of just speculating and stuff. So that's how that works, but it's so unlikely. And something my agent just recently said to me, and it's kind of a bummer. Like, I'm not a fiction writer, but there's rarely a big market for memoir. Eat, Pray, Love in 2006. Gosh, it's crazy. That was almost 20 years ago when that came out. Oh my gosh. It just like so much happened in women's lives after that. I would dare say there was more of a market for memoir at that time, but it's a lot narrower now. I'm grateful that anybody decided to take a chance on this next book. And I think it was because I was like so insistent and so like passionate from my heart that we need to be recognizing teachers right now in our society. They've never had a tougher job. And I have a whole national publication, that helps me get word out about the book. So we're going to get to all that. But to the question, do you need an agent? I have seen book deals happen without them. I would argue you want an agent. Ideally, again, a good one. But sometimes you don't know how much they're going to go to bat for you until you've signed on with them. A lot of times what happens is you sign on for a period of months with them. They pledge that, if they don't sell your book, say within like 3 months or 6 months, then, you're free to go out and find another agent. But unfortunately, at that point, if they shopped your book around and it's been rejected, it's very unlikely unless the next agent has you make some really, really significant edits. I have seen a situation where one situation, where an author had been working with one agent for a while, and this agent did not get her a deal. And I do not remember the circumstances. I hear so many of these stories. But eventually she gets another agent who's interested. And I think that agent had her do some really, really major revisions. And ultimately she did get a deal. And now I think she's about to publish like her 4th book with a major publisher. So, you kind of do want an agent. I'm going to turn to my notes. What are some of the, let me talk to you about the materials and kind of the professional background you need to have to get your first book published. It starts with a proposal. And the proposal, a lot of times, all the time, it contains some sample material that, you envision going in the book. And it's basically, a combination. It's a document that should irresistibly lay out the saleability of the project with a combination of data on the sales potential and your creative approach. And, it's the voice, it's the bells and whistles. It's like, this other book in the market has done really well in the past 2 years. But here's like a different angle that I'm bringing to it or a different argument that I'm bringing to it. So there are three things. This is, again, just my opinion. There are three features that you and your project need to demonstrate for publishers to take interest in you. Number one, it's got to be a really good idea. It's got to be a good idea. And you can usually say it in one sentence. I guess like you could refer to that. People call it the elevator pitch. But it's just like, oh my God, like when you know, you know. The next thing you need is you need good writing. And there are some of us on this planet who are born with the gift of being good writers. Again, I would not necessarily even call myself one of them. I think what I had going for me in my young years, really young years, like when I was still young and in school, again, I loved reading, but I also just had a really open, vulnerable heart in my writing. And I guess I'm lucky that I grew up in an environment and in a school, especially where, I felt safe that I could really pour my heart out on the page to some of my early teachers. And then as time went on, I'll say this, I kept writing, but by the time I'm in college, certainly grad school, and then definitely by the time I'm working in book publishing and I'm like writing on the side, I am writing all the time. Like I was writing all the time. So I went into publishing in 2004 and got my first book deal in 2009. And I published, I was not getting paid for the first 2-3 years whenever I was writing freelance at night and on the weekends. There were a couple like smaller New York publications. Oh my gosh, like it's bringing back such memories to talk about this because we go to like the launch party for the March issue of New York Moves. And I remember like my editor was so great on, on that, but I'm pretty sure I was not getting paid for those. Like I was just trying to get bylines. And that's like how it goes. The industry is even a lot different right now. But, and as we know, I mean, print was more prominent back then than digital publishing, websites and stuff. It's the total reverse now. And even like digital media, it's a really, really, really tough industry. And I say that not to discourage you, but like you need to go into this super clear eyed and like, it's an amateur, tell whenever somebody pitches a story or, like you just kind of question why an editor is making the decisions that they're making. Or I remember one writer who actually had like a years of experience in the past couple of years. She was like, why did you run a stock photo with this article on your website instead of, the family photo that I gave you? And I said, if you look at every single article on our website, that is our practice, unless it gets custom art because it's part of a campaign or something. So just like, you gotta be savvy. You have to, and usually being savvy is a combination of being consistently humble and also like really understanding the sales language. Okay. So those are your two things. Two of three. I'm about to get into the third one. It's got to be a good idea, and you have got to be a good writer. Number three, you've got to be such a good writer that you can demonstrate to the agent, the editor, the publisher that you can gather an audience around your work. Like we call it platform. I don't love that word necessarily. And gosh, I mean, there are authors who have these, like, obviously, I mean, I talk with celebrities a lot. Like a celebrity memoir obviously is going to get a lot more exposure than somebody like, say, mine. So platform is a little bit tricky, and especially now, because what I see happening sometimes in publishing, and sometimes I'll post about this on LinkedIn a little bit, because as a health editor, I find it really problematic. Sometimes platform is all that an author has. They don't necessarily, like, a lot of influencers don't necessarily have great knowledge or wisdom to share. Or like you see some of these nutritionists without like actual clinical credentialed certification getting book deals. And that makes me a little bit crazy. So, and it's just like, some like young editor at a publisher got excited because this person had 336,000 followers on Instagram. I wanted to buy the book based on that, but that's not really sound practice. And that's become a much bigger conversation in recent years. I remember, like, it's such a journey this time launching Show Don't Tell, because, Instagram didn't even exist when How to Love an American Man came out, I don't think. So, so times have changed, and we know that social media has brought like this whole different piece to the business. But you've got to have some kind of platform. You've got to show that, you've published on some websites that publish the same kind of topic that you are writing about. Maybe you have a personal blog and you can just say to a publisher, like, I get 2,000 visitors a day to my blog, but just understand that the numbers matter. The data matters. So let me walk you through the pieces of a book proposal. And to be honest, I didn't even take notes on this. I've written so darn many that I'm telling you this basically from memory. I once had an agent who said to me, writers hate proposals. I had never thought of it that way until then. When it comes to developing my own proposal, like for my own book, I actually find that like a really tantalizing challenge, because I like the opportunity to dig in and make notes about all the different sellable points. I published with these publications this past year. My last book sold this many copies. The editor or the website where I lead content gets this many readers per month. And this is the other thing I'll say about book proposals. I've seen them where they're like 12 to 16 pages, and it's by like a really famous athlete. And so there's not a ton that let's like, this person has a following. This person has a mindset and wisdom and inspiration that like an audience is going to be really, really excited about. And so an agent doesn't need a stack of pages to sell something like that. But I've also seen proposals, like I've written proposals that are closer to 100 pages. Honestly, it's a ton of work, but the good part is that, fingers crossed, the proposal sells, you get the book deal, and then the book is it's a lot of it is written. You definitely have like a clear mental map for how or how it's outlined and, the sequence of chapters. And to me, the outline is no joke. Like that's half the battle. So I'm making notes to myself right now. So a proposal opens up with the overview, and that's usually, I don't know, ballpark, really rough estimate. That's like 5 pages, roughly 5 pages. I've seen it 3 pages. I've seen it 12 pages, just introducing, the idea, who you are, why you think this is sellable, why you think it's going to be compelling to a publisher. It's just like the general idea. You're just presenting the philosophy behind it, the idea. Next is what comes after the overview typically. The about the author. That is your author bio. That is where you want to be sure, like in the first couple of sentences, you want anything recognizable, anywhere you've been published, super recognizably, whether it's a magazine, a website, if you've given really big talks and, crowds of hundreds or thousands of people have gathered to listen to you speak. You want to say that in the about the author. It's a couple paragraphs, if that, but it's got it like every single sentence has to be, this is my opinion, it has to be a zinger. Cause you have to show why you stand out. So, and then there's the about the author. From here, by the way, there are a couple really, really great books. When you're looking for an agent, I think it's Writer's Marketplace, and they update that often. I think every year, you can, poke around and see which agents represent your type of work. I've also seen, a deal or two happen when the author read, I think it's, like How to Write a Book Proposal for Dummies. These are good resources. These are good resources. So the overview, the about the author, and then you go into, a choice. You could go into the outline next, or you could save the chapter outline for the last piece of the proposal. But it can be anywhere from again, rough estimate, half a page to a couple pages, just outlining what is going to be covered in each chapter or what events are going to happen in each chapter. Like I said, the outline is half the battle. It's the lift, in my opinion. It's just what takes the longest time. And this is kind of like if you are thinking about moving, in and out of different time periods, if you are thinking about something that I did with Show Don't Tell, is we opened every chapter with a quotation, with an epigraph from just a couple of sentences. Most of them were from real life teachers. These were friends of mine or readers from over the years, who I reached out to and I asked them a few questions, about their reflections on the profession of, teaching and on their philosophy and their struggles. and teaching. So you can speak to that as part of the outline. Any kind of creative approach that you're planning to take with the book, the outline is a good place to talk about it. Some proposals I've seen, they have a bullet pointed list of like, this book is going to appeal to the however many tens of thousands of librarians in the country. And this book is going to appeal to college and university audiences, which publishers love to see, by the way. Anytime you think you have a leg up in getting a book into the classroom setting, that tells them that you're going to move some volume. You're going to sell a lot of copies at once. So that is something that, that I've seen proposals have. I think they call it like the target audiences. And it can be a page or two of just like a bulleted list. This audience, there are however many of them in the country. And here's why they're going to love it. Just like in one or two sentences each. Comp titles. That's another section in a proposal. Comp titles are actually, we call them comparative and competitive titles. These are, kind of every agent will tell you how far back, like every agent has a little bit of a different opinion for how far back comp titles should go. It's not going to be necessarily advantageous to you to say like, 20 years ago, this book came out and readers loved it. And you want it to be pretty recent within the last couple of years. But that's just a couple paragraphs. Like, this is the book. This was the author. Here's who published it. Here's, what month it came out. And the publisher tied it in with, just off the top of my head, like Breast Cancer Awareness Month, because it was a memoir about, surviving breast cancer. I like to list usually about 4 comp titles. And what you really want to highlight is why your book is going to be different and better. And then it's good to include a sample chapter, whether it's the introduction, whether it's the first chapter. You could put a couple chapters in to review. Sometimes if you've already written a decent chunk of the book, but there's like a really moving, emotional chapter, we kind of laugh in the business. And they say this in TV too. If they cry, they buy. So if you've got a chapter that's, particularly powerful and moving and thought provoking, that might be a good one to include as a sample chapter. Am I leaving anything out? Oh, the marketing and promotion. This is a big one. And this can also be slotted in like right after the about the author. That's a good place for it to go. Marketing and promotion. How many readers, how many eyeballs, how many ears could you get to listen and care about this project? Like, do you have connections to any producers at any of the national morning news shows? Have you ever blogged for Oprah.com? A friend of mine who's going to be on the show, I think next episode, he was a regular contributor he was a blogger. Actually, he had his own blog on psychologytoday.com. It was such a good blog. And I discovered him, I think right after How to Love an American Man came out, and like his work it's so Ken Page, just like look up Ken Page, LCSW. He's a psychotherapist. But since he had a regular blog on Psychology Today and he had written for Oprah.com, when he got a book deal, it really helped him that he was able to, just as it helped me, like anywhere you've been able to freelance or land some work, or again, like if you've spoken at universities or to women's or men's groups or at churches, in front of business audiences. It might be my husband works in healthcare and has, given talks in front of doctors and things like that. Whoever your audience is and whoever you're trying to get the book in front of, you want to use the marketing and promotion section to speak to that. In mine, for Show Don't Tell, I mean, we had a lot of really good numbers that we were able to speak to. Like, I lead health content for Reader's Digest. Our health content lives at thehealthy.com. This is where, here's how many readers we get every single month. I will try to also, I'll work with my colleagues to try to get, an excerpt published, which fortunately that's happening in a summer issue of Reader's Digest magazine. They're running a chapter of Show Don't Tell, which is so exciting. It's for the Genius issue, we call it. It's, the back to school issue also. So just I think I'll share some follow up to this. I'll find a way, or, once we get the website up and going, I'll try to provide like a sample or something to really show you. It's not an easy business, but it's a really exciting business and it's a really fulfilling business. Two more things I'll speak to. How do you go about getting an agent? First, you want to have at least a good bit of a draft of your book proposal written. Then what you do is send out, it's all done by email now. I mean, if any agent is not working by email these days, like I know I can think of one who asks me to send printouts of things, and I'm like, never mind, I'm moving on. I'm sorry, who has time for that? So usually it's just a 1-page email. They are, you are articulating in that 1 page. It's called a query letter. And from the first sentence, like it's something I tell my team, every syllable has to sell. Whether you're, I know a firefighter, he was the chief, of the fire department of the highest crime city in California. And he's an amazing inspirational story. He suffered a traumatic brain injury, and like the query letter, it pops, or certainly any numbers that can help you stand out in the query letter. And you can kind of like Google just like a good publishing query letter. And then I would once you query an agent, once you send that email, I think you want to give them a friendly, like, this is not a rule, but I would give 4 weeks. It seems a little bit, in my opinion, it would seem a little bit aggressive if you don't give them that amount of time. You could follow up after a week or two, but don't expect anything. Like, they have, you've heard of the slush pile. They have really, really full inboxes. They're trying to read as much as they can, and just be patient. And no matter what, always be friendly. Always be friendly. Publishing is a small town. Always be friendly, even when you get rejected. Just be friendly, or like, if you can't be friendly, just say nothing at all. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. Don't push back. If they reject you, I would not try to win them over. That's not your moment to try to persuade or change their mind. Move on and know that everybody in this business gets rejected. A lot of people have asked me, like, should you be querying multiple agents at once? You totally can. I would say, I had a conversation with a friend somewhat recently. She had connections to, like, friend of a friend, or a friend of hers knew of a specific agent who like came from the same part of the world that we came from. So his worldview, she knew would like, he would get what she was trying to do with this memoir. If you have a connection like that, give them an exclusive, like give them 2 or 4 weeks where you don't send your query letter or your proposal out to anybody else, and see if you can just give them that grace. It's just a nice thing to do. And also like give them, you could say in your query letter, like, you're an exclusive send. I'm not going to send this out to any other agents for the next 4 weeks. At the point of that 4 weeks, reach back out to them. If you hear nothing else, then I would say it's fair game. Go ahead and pitch elsewhere, query other agents. And so that was about the query letter. And then told you I was going to be all over the place. And I don't even I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm distilling 2 decades of experience in this business. I kind of don't even need notes anymore. I was just going to talk a little bit about ghostwriting. People ask me about that process, even what it means. Almost every celebrity memoir any celebrity work of nonfiction, not all of them, but most of them have a ghostwriter. And that person is either getting name credit or not. But just understand, like, an Olympic athlete doesn't necessarily know how to package their own book proposal, or simply does not have the time. So they will pay a writer. I've ghostwritten, I think I always have to count. I think I've ghostwritten 6 books for major publishers. These have been entrepreneurs, philanthropists, politicians. I've written proposals for one very beloved pro athlete whose name you would know. At least no 2 figures in Hollywood. So I've written these people's books or their book proposals. And I'm the as told to, when we're a ghostwriter, you're kind of like the producer for a studio album. It's your job to make it sound polished, and shape it and make it organized and make it sound really professional, but you're like, the spotlight's never going to be on you. And I actually really, really love that part of it. I also what I've learned, guys, especially having just written my second memoir so I wrote How to Love an American Man. And then for the next 12 years, I was ghostwriting. This is the first time since 2012 that I have not had a book lined up on the heels of the last one. It feels really, really good. Like, imagine having a term paper hanging over your head all the time, even in the summer. Was like not good for my mental health. But a lot of times, either, the fact is, like, sometimes you need the work. I went back to work full time, right before the pandemic started. So I was still taking ghostwriting projects like at night and on the weekends. I was working on these things, but I can't do it anymore. I really like that it's so much easier for me to advise on what's interesting about someone's life, and their material. It's way easier to do that for somebody else than I found it to be for myself with Show Don't Tell. With ghostwriting, it's stressful. It's really, really stressful. There are a lot of people, just in my experience, there are a lot of people you're trying to please. One of the reasons that I would say yes to almost every ghostwriting project that came to me was, you know, in addition to like, it's nice to have the work. The business can be really feast or famine. So it's just like you want to take work whenever it's coming. I'm very, very blessed that for me, it tended to come pretty consistently. Um, it, but it's just like it's stressful. It's draining. I mean, there's like the physical work of sitting at the computer itself. That's not so bad if that's all you're doing for a living. When I went back to work full time, that got tougher. And you know, people, I'll speak really candidly about ghostwriting. You don't know when you're going to get paid. You've done all this work and then you're waiting on edits, or you're waiting for the author to read it and give you their notes. And there's the contract that is supposed to provide assurances for all this, just to ensure that you get paid for the work you've done, but that's still not always a guarantee. So, it was fun. It was, you know, the point that I was going to make is I was always just so honored that these people were going to entrust their stories to me. And, you know, I could usually see they understood, like, I become your confidant. Tell me everything, you know, don't try not to hold things back, and then it would be my, you know, up to me to decide, like, oof, is this something that someone would really want in print about their lives? Or, hey, this story that I know you're a little bit leery about putting it in here, but like, this is interesting and people are like, this is going to help it sell, you know? So, ghostwriting is probably like a whole, I could talk about it it's really, really an interesting field. Very, I don't know if I want to say specialized. It's also just a lot stressful, because you want to make the author happy. You want to create a book that's going to sell. And sometimes those, intentions are at odds with each other. And like, it's interesting. I'm grateful to all the clients, that I've worked with over the years. We often get really close. I become like, you know, in some cases you get to be like family. You travel with them, or I even when it wasn't in my contract, I wanted to always go and spend time in person with my clients. And, cause I just felt like that informs the work so much better. Sometimes it's in the smallest details that like it really brings the material on the page to life. So anyway, so that's it in a nutshell. I think if you have comments, we will make sure that we've got a email set up. You can reach out to me. I cannot, just please understand, these next few weeks with the next book coming out, things are going to be a little bit bonkers. So it's going to take me time to respond to things on email. But like, if you're commenting on YouTube, I'll ask the team to keep an eye out. If you have questions that I can answer about publishing, then I totally would love to. And next episode of What the Woman, like I said, we're going to be bringing on my really special friend, Ken. He's a New York City based psychotherapist. Some of the best work, most insightful work around finding a partner and just really authentic intimacy. But also, I feel like I'm hearing that relationships or like dating is even harder than it was whenever I was looking for my own partner. I can understand why it is that way. Like, I'm just sorry, because it was like, I feel like it was hard back then. But Ken talks about, he's got this one philosophy that when I met my husband and just was starting to get to know him, I was like, okay, this is what Ken has been teaching me and thousands of others about. Like, this is how you know. And this is something he hasn't talked about, but I want to have this dialogue with him. I think it can also inform your purpose in your career too. This one philosophy that he teaches, like, I think it could be the number one secret to success in finding the right partner and, in finding your purpose or finding, the right career or whatever your next career move is supposed to be. So I'm excited to have that conversation, and I'm going to be telling the story of what's been going on in my life. For those of you who, you're old friends of mine, like in my ghostwriting years for the past, 10, 12 years that I've been doing that, I went pretty under the radar, and there was so much, so much, going on in my life. And it was good to have some privacy, but there were also just a lot of really, a lot of lessons. And I'm excited to tell you all of that through my conversation with Ken. Just bring everybody up to speed as we get ready for this new book to come out, because it just brings you up to date and you'll just know what's been going on. So thanks for listening. Looking forward to the next conversation with you on What the Woman.